Ken Boundy, you are chair of the Platinum Group for 2020 Exchange. No doubt you lead and facilitate a group of formidable CEOs. You discuss big issues to do with productivity, innovation, culture, but I should imagine there is something that is a cornerstone that the CEOs must embrace. What is that?
Well, it's all around leadership, but leadership has created its own industry, and real leadership is actually bringing people on a journey to achieve agreed outcomes. So if you simplify that, there's determining what the agreed objectives are and then bringing people on the journey.
You say agreed. Now, who do you want to agree? And who is it who agrees?
Well, ultimately it's management and board, but in the ideal world, it's everyone involved on the journey. So all those people in an organisation, but the strategy and the objectives and the vision really is something that needs to be signed off by the CEO and the board. And
what would chief executives do if they don't agree?
Well, I think if CEOs have got those issues, they need to put their hand up to find another role, or else go and do some deep exploration. One of the things about the 2020 Exchange is that sometimes CEOs come with those latent doubts and fears themselves, but in the safe environment where leaders and other people are finding, incidentally, the same sort of issues, the safe and non-judgmental environment allows those things to be tabled and often for solutions to be found. But fundamentally, if there's a misalignment between the CEO's views and those of the board or the organisation in general, that mismatch needs to be addressed, either by some self-reflection or some other action.
Ken, from your experience, both locally and globally, where do you think CEOs are today, and what are the comparisons?
We have the capacity today to be much better informed in making the decisions that lead to determining the vision and the objectives. If we don't and we adhere to the status quo, that's a recipe for extinction. So, the status quo is the number one enemy of any business. But I'm impressed with leadership that takes us from the traditional setting of KPIs and performance measures through to a leadership that actually is more inclusive, and a leadership where the insights about the future are determined not only by the people who sit around the board table and the executive table, but involving a wider cross-section. And there are some really good examples of where companies have taken a different attitude to risk instead of a compliance attitude, and turned it on its head to say, well, what are the opportunities coming from risk? I know of one company that's taken a process of strategic innovation involving a whole cross-section of creative and talented people within the organisation who dared to look at things differently with stunning results. So I think the new leadership model uses information, big data, big analytics in a powerful way, but also in an inclusive way to actually have those agreed objectives.
You mentioned big data. Is this a new term emerging? And what does it mean to you?
Yeah, look, I think our strategy has always been, for at least a couple of decades, informed by improved information. But the term big data has been around for maybe a few years. With increased computing and mathematical competence, now we can determine cause and effect of almost any question with big analytics. The thing is, you need to know what questions to ask, therefore it needs to be related back to the vision. But the dashboard of a CEO today, in terms of the information to set the strategy, is far more powerful than ever before.
If we go online today and type in and search for the word leader or leadership, especially on those large book chain websites, I think we'll get 30,000 hits of titles that are available on the topic. Now, this can be quite confusing to young aspiring leaders and CEOs who really want to understand this topic. Where do you think they can go to better understand the essence of leadership?
It's a bit like a golf swing. I don't think we should complicate it too much. So if we go back to my philosophy that leadership is bringing people on a journey to achieve effective or agreed outcomes. Let's simplify it and understand what that is. We've talked a little about how you get agreed objectives. Let me talk a little about the journey that people come on. And we all know that in the old command and control models of hierarchical organisations, that worked to a certain extent. There is no place for that in today's world, with the digitalisation, the inherent sharing and networking that occurs in society. We can't operate like that. So this is where the notion of culture and behaviours really become important. And what I'd say in answer to your question, that if leaders can simplify this whole myriad of conversations around leadership, around how best you bring people on a journey, and I might say as an aside that the 2020 Exchange is just the sort of forum where those conversations can flourish. But take the culture one, for example. We know how powerful aligned behaviours in an organisation can be. And in 2020 we walk the talk. We actually measure our own behaviours and reflect on those. We've seen the results of those in organisations that are extremely powerful for outcomes. So ultimately that can transgress through to what I used to work with a very enlightened boss on, a shared leadership model. But that's very difficult to achieve, and it's to me that's the holy grail.
You advocate shared leadership, but at the same time you say that one ought to embark upon it with caution.
No, it's if people understand the power of shared leadership. In other words, as a leader, I can achieve a certain amount of effectiveness. With the power of others sharing that leadership, my effectiveness is multiplied many times over. If people understand that and they really want to embark on the journey, it requires a lot of hard work and persistence. It's not an overnight phenomenon, but we're now, if people want to go down that journey, we're now assisted with tools like Pulse that measure behaviours. But the concept is something that's embraced by many, but not necessarily followed through. Hard to achieve, very powerful end result.
You say that a chief executive must take the people on a journey, but you also think that journey must be measured.
Well, you can measure the extent to which cultural change and behaviour and even shared leadership is occurring. You can measure that on the dashboard. I think my point about the journey towards team-based leadership is the one where people, other than the CEO, take responsibility, and this cascades through various teams. There is a need to have a real commitment within an organisation to achieve that.
You said it's a difficult journey, but in an organisation, something that's difficult tends to be put on the back burner. So how do we balance the urgent and the now with what we know we have to do?
Enlightened CEOs make an investment in the future. One of my leaders once said to me, if you get the conditions right, the outcomes will flow. And so it's an investment in the conditions, the enabling conditions that generate the business outcomes.
You come across many CEOs. What do you think we are doing to nurture the next generation of leaders?
My experience has shown me that the best way is to be involved with an enlightened CEO who understands the issues that we've just been talking about around behaviour and team-based leadership. Not everyone's that lucky to find the right leaders. So, once again, I come back to organisations like 2020 Exchange that absolutely understand the nurturing and development that are required experientially to help people on that journey.
Ken Boundy, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.